Joined now in the Go-Go Sports studio by our Tuesday regular from the Province and Post Media, Mr. Patrick Johnston. How are you? Nice to see you again.
It was so cold outside, I had to come in here.
I know.
The snow comes right down to the city on the mountain. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Thought we were turning the corner there a couple of weeks ago.
November or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
November.
Exactly.
November.
Hey, not so bad. Not so bad. Missed you in that Bailey last Friday.
I did. We were there. I didn't even realize you guys were there.
You were there for the nooner?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
God.
didn't see
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. I saw. Your
I saw the photos afterwards.
I know.
Was
I saw
like,
your
oh,
photos
What a
afterwards.
beautiful father-daughter day at the ball game. We'll start with the Bodog poll question. We'll go from there. Lots and lots to discuss after Patrick Allvin yesterday. What should be the Canucks offseason priority? The extension for Elias, the third-line centerman, another top-four defenseman, or feel free to go off the board here?
Isn't obviously the extension for Elias Pettersson because that's kind of everything.
That's how I voted, but
How is this not going to be 100%?
Patrick, some of us live day to day, week to week, year to year, and that third line center is absolutely necessary for meeting the end goal of making the playoffs next year.
It is true. But we've been talking about a third line center for a very long time.
Yeah, exactly. They have yet
I'm
to
not
find
interested.
that elusive third line right shot centerman.
As someone tweeted at me, "Where's Brandon Sutter?"
Right.
Honestly, the last good year they had from a sort of third line right shot center was Brandon Sutter some time ago.
Yeah.
All right, we'll put you down for AP 40. One of the many things that I take as sort of a headline or a subhead from Patrick Allvin yesterday is he's challenged Brock Boeser here, and he's challenged him to change his offseason training. We were talking about it yesterday on the welcome mat. We've talked about it for years on this show. Just go send him to Bo Horvat's skating coach. What did you make of that? And what did you make of Brock's change of heart? Then suddenly he wants back now.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, was the reaction on Twitter where people, I mean, it's the classic, everyone reacts to the one quote. And it is on us, I think, to try to put as much context into these things. And Allvin, to his credit, had discussed everything that Boeser has talked to us and told me about last week when I wrote the thing about him being the PHWA's nominee for the Masterton and how tough this year, or first half certainly was, realizing, how on his own now he is. And Allvin was very reckoning. He said, in the big picture, what we see in this player is a player who could be more. And we think what he does in the summer in general has not been optimizing that. And I mean, that's been a common comment they have had on everyone.
OEL too. They expect this to be a pretty magical summer by all accounts.
This
Big
was
summer.
another,
Yeah.
he needs to, quote, get his name back, much like OEL,
Yeah,
which
I
I think is
actually-
a very good turn of phrase from Patrick.
I thought, I mean, that was one of many things that stood out for me. That was a GM who was in control and understood what he was there for, which, I think that's the second time we saw him I guess we saw him at the deadline too, but that was sort of the other one that stood out for me was when it was at the end of January, when they announced that McCabe was being shut down. He was very clear what he was there for, what he had to answer. He had some actual answers.
Allvin was good.
Yeah,
it
I
was
thought
his
he was
best
good.
performance.
I thought it was good. Yeah. So, yes, overall, the picture has been we believe these guys need to be different in how they prepare themselves. It wasn't, which was a nice change because, so often my team's not fit enough. And it wasn't, I don't think it's that. What Tocchet has been talking a lot about, and rightly or wrongly, is his belief is they need to change how their sort of strength works. He thinks these guys need to be different in how they are set up physically, I suppose is the way to put it. So yeah, one of many guys that they're looking at to have a quote unquote big summer for this guy.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask for this team that just needs some profound change. And he said there was going to be changes. And it's not about believing him, because I'm sure that he wants the change.
Mm-hmm.
But can they actually pull off big change? Like, we were just lamenting here before the show, like, that Louis Eriksson contract felt like £1 million around the neck.
Mm-hmm.
For a million years.
For 1 million years. And now it's actually worse. Like, the OEL contract is actually worse.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to Rink White on my way in, as those guys pointed out. 8 years if you buy it out. I mean, we've talked about this before, but like as everybody's noted, like you buy him out and you're just eating money forever.
Infinitely looking at OEL's cap hit.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so there's
But in the first year, again, don't mean to belabor this.
1 year, Matt.
No, there's several years of cap savings available to you, including $7 million for this upcoming year.
Yeah.
There is a lot of pain down the road, but what I'm saying is the benefit in the near term for me outweighs the long term, but nevertheless,
that fair enough. But it was interesting again to me. One of the things Allvin said was him talking about it would make things difficult to manage down the road, which is 100% talking about
that is right.
Pettersson, because the one of 2 years where that buyout hit would actually be biggest. It's not the first year; it's the second and third year.
Yeah,
or fourth.
It's third and fourth. Yeah, where they get to $4 million. It goes. I think it goes almost full savings to $2 million.
Yeah.
And then 4.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay, that's right. So, but literally, when your Pettersson contract is in there,
yes,
and at the front end of it, and Pettersson's cap hit is going to be enormous.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is the plan, that is what they want, which is he has become the superstar. And that was, by the way, Allvin afterwards, I sort of talked to him and I made a joke about it. I promise I won't ask you about superstars. He goes, "It kind of worked though, didn't it?" I was like, credit to him. It was quite funny actually. That to me, that's the tell. They need this player. They look at this player. They said, even if he's not, they know he's not going to be a $7.5 million defenseman, but they need him to be a contributor. And I have a story coming out today. Farhan and I talked to OEL in the hallway, and he talked to us about how the foot injury put him behind the 8 ball. Mm-hmm. Allvin said that, but that's something OEL said to us. It put him behind the 8 ball, and he never caught up. And he said he told me it affected everything. He couldn't turn. He was not mobile enough. He wasn't agile enough. And this is a player that is obviously in his 30s. I mean, it's devastating. Now the challenge is, can he get that back?
That's what I'm saying. Is there a relief coming? Because if it's the same old, I mean.
And they, so in the end, they desperately, the team inherently, he's going to be here.
Yeah.
They need him to rediscover something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, year 3 and year 4, it's a $4.7 million cap hit. He won't be playing. I mean, it is still a $2.8 million savings.
Yeah,
and Arizona reaps some of that based on what you would be paying him. But yes, it is 2 years of fair bit of cap space, and then it's a couple years of a little bit of cap space, and then it is 4 seasons of actually no cap space. In fact, a cap cost. I ask you this because you've done a lot of work in it in the past. But a practice facility. Pointed out to Patrick Allvin, one of 2 NHL teams without a practice facility. That's when he offered I guess Jim should have been here line, because we all know that's a Rutherford file. He did acknowledge it makes life harder when the building is not available. He said the players have been great about it, that they do want to be downtown. And then there was a soft overture, if you will, to the city could use another sheet of ice, and wouldn't this be great for minor hockey players? Do you think there's something afoot there, or do you think he's just talking theoretically as Rutherford tries to get this done?
Well, to be clear, it's actually not a Rutherford file, because as Jim pointed out to me when I asked him at the beginning of the season, it's a Michael Doyle file.
Michael Doyle file, yeah.
I'll put myself on Easonos.
I think Allvin even said something about the business side is looking into this. But yes, it's complicated. There's not a lot of options. The players live in Yaletown. They live in Kits. JT Miller, as he will tell you, lives in West Bend, because that way he doesn't have any neighbors. But mostly, they have this sort of a as needed deal. They revamped with 8 rinks, but they haven't been to 8 rinks since the fall.
Wow.
And the joke we sort of had developed was, well, the GM and the president live in Dunbar, which is near UBC, and so no wonder they keep going to UBC.
Right.
But also, all the players live that way. I don't think any of them have ever been fans of going out to Burnaby, even if it is sort of vaguely convenient by the highway there. But
UBC is a nice facility. It's just too far.
It's too far. So. And people keep going, well, what about this? What about this? I'm like, well, I mean, yes, they could have. There have been many permanent options presented to them. Mm-hmm. This is the 3rd management team that has been looking to find a permanent practice setup. And you can it's not like this hasn't been tried. And I think if you think in the end, it comes back to them having control and how the financing works on it. Which comes back to ownership and their preferences on how they like to control things.
But you made the trips around the National Hockey League, and it's really nice for them to say they want it downtown. How many practice facilities are downtown?
Well, that's it. I mean,
exactly. It's 30 miles from Lower Manhattan to Rye, New York, where the Rangers often practice.
Yeah.
El Segundo is
It's-
not exactly
No.
in the
El
middle of...
Segundo is not
Yeah.
exactly convenient if you're on LA freeways.
Yeah.
Like even in Canada, practice facilities in Montreal and Ottawa are out in the sticks.
Toronto's at Etobicoke. Now
Right,
it's closer to the
exactly.
Hut freeway, but
So why does this team need the downtown practice facility?
Yeah, I think the downtown idea is. I mean, I think in the sense he means in the middle. Not they're not going to
within reason.
They're not. Yeah,
Yes.
they're not going to the Richmond Ice Center. They're not. They're probably not going to Burnaby. They're certainly not going to Surrey.
Yeah.
They're, they recognize if we can ideally do this near where the players live, that would be a nice enhancement in terms of player recruitment.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
If you squint, there are plots of land around, like the city of Vancouver. Well, there is that parking lot next to the Cambie Bridge, which is, that involves building something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I'm kind of poking around on. But I talked to him briefly afterwards, and it's very clear they are actually on this one thinking creatively. Now it's finding a partner. Whether that's just simply building their own space on an already existing facility or twinning something, or as he kind of laid it out there. They're clearly, from their standpoint, they look at how other teams do it. I mean, the San Jose Sharks own 10 rinks in the San Jose area. I don't think anybody's expecting that to happen here, but a lot of teams have looked at how they can be an influence in terms of developing the game in the community. And certainly you go out to, say, Langley or the Tri-Cities, there have been some sheets of ice added in the last couple decades. But in the city, North Shore, there has not been. Like Vancouver literally is net zero in the last 20 years.
It's unbelievable.
Can you just do me a favor? Can you remind them that a win-win deal means the partner has to win as well, not that they win twice?
Yeah.
I say that because, of course, there was a dalliance with Abbotsford Center years ago, but they weren't going to win enough, and so
Yeah.
they put the squeeze and wound up being rewarded here with
Yeah.
the sweetheart deal of running Abbey Center. I don't think a lot of people would have picked up on the question about the medical staff, Patrick. But it is something that Blake, myself, Jeff, and I think others around the club have been hearing since the beginning of the year. The change in medical staff, of course, that's always a little bit traumatic for NHL players because you put your trust in the Roger Takahashis and the John Sandersons of the world. But then where the facilities were located and the temporary need for, as the building was undergoing renovation, then about who traveled and who didn't travel. Needless to say, what the feedback we got is that the players were none too pleased with the way that the athletic and medical staff was set up beyond the Tanner Pearson matter this year. This is more extensive than just did somebody screw up on Tanner Pearson's surgery.
Yeah, the CBA says you have to have 2 athletic therapists on the road. Technically, if you actually look at it, you can run everybody's name. They only have one, Eric Tremere. He is the athletic therapist of record. Under the CBA, you can essentially apply or equivalent type thing. You can say, well, this chiropractor is an equivalent, and there you go. And that's Dr. Eric Ewell, who has been on the road. And so that's their 2 therapists. One is certified as a therapist. One of them is a chiropractor. So they have delivered, but they didn't go conventionally. In the past, they'd had 2 therapists on the road. The change, as far as we can tell, was just to make a change. There was no philosophical divide, as far as I can tell.
Like, is it Rutherford and Allvin going, we want our guys? Or?
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't. No, I don't know because they didn't know anybody here.
Yeah.
So it's very,
because one of the things we heard was that for some players, like, it took time to actually see somebody, and there was some frustration.
We had one source that really didn't like the quality of care either. Like, have you heard any complaints?
I mean, I think that they have carried on as best they have, but certainly we've heard frustrations about all sorts of things. So I hadn't heard anything specific, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was a thing. They at home, you have to have an athletic therapist at home as well when you're on the road. So Graham Poole, but Graham Poole isn't full time. If you actually go and look at his bio, he works out in Burnaby and he works with the Canucks in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think, he's been there for years, and I think he's well regarded. He is the quote unquote rehab therapist. He is an athletic therapist.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what he's doing. So again, like that is something that was interesting to me, and I caught that as well when he talked about, essentially we're going to review, are we doing the best for our team?
Well, there was a line in there about it's their responsibility. We have to make sure that we have what the players need.
Yeah, and
which was, an odd comment. Like if you didn't understand what was going on, I think, but if you did sort of understand, I think it's gotten back to them that the players needed more.
Yes,
that they didn't deliver to their end of the bargain on that this year.
Yeah, and I think it comes to that again. Goes back to the training center. Like. They're one of two teams, as I understand it. And thankfully, Patrick nodded when I said this because I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the deal. And he goes, yeah, we're one of two teams in the NHL that doesn't have their own separate training center. And, if you look at, it's not just hockey. You look at all the top sports in the world. You look at the Whitecaps, the BC Lions. Like, everybody has their own physical setup that's not just their playing facility. Now, obviously, the Whitecaps and the Lions are unique in that they don't control a stadium, but they still have team spaces in the stadium that's dedicated to them. But they have their own thing. You look at all the top soccer teams in the world; they all have these massive training facilities.
Sure.
Major League Baseball, everybody has their huge facilities at spring training.
The Blue Jays have just spent tens of millions of dollars in Dunedin.
Yeah, that's a thing that big league teams do.
Yep. And
this team has not had that. I mean, they had a decent setup, I think, at 8 rinks. Up till about 13 years ago, and then what my understanding was, it was about essentially spending a little bit of money, being asked to spend a little bit of money, and
it was pretty old by the end.
It was old. It needed some upgrades, and the facility was like, we need to upgrade this place, and so that's where you're at, and they are looking. That certainly this management group, like previous management groups, certainly the Gillis era was very looked at this and said, yes, let's build something. It didn't happen. So
we call it an organization. That seems flattering because it seems disorganized. Like all of these decisions, all these renovations, so poorly timed, so poorly designed. I mean, we heard one tale of an opposing general manager, and this came as a direct source, who just said flatly, "I'm not doing the long walk around Rogers Arena. I'm walking. I'm taking the shortcut and blew through
straight through the Canucks area to my team's area because
I'm not doing the lap.
We got
here.
a plane to catch.
Yeah. Was that the guy that got let go on Monday?
Perhaps,
because I saw it happen.
Yeah. So, when you're being called out really by other organizations before the port, what's going on here?
Well, I had a question. I mean, I didn't ask it because Allvin kind of nodded towards it. They're doing more renovations, right? They're building this VIP suite, this high-priced, highfalutin VIP, ice level thing, lounge or whatever it is, between the dressing rooms, underneath 117. 117, by the way, is getting new seats.
Oh,
those are the blue seats they test drove?
Lucky 117ers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when the rest are coming, but we'll
really?
see. But I don't know. We'll see. That we know this much for sure. But I found myself wondering, everything was delayed last fall. This was a question. It came up. Like, Allvin nodded towards it. Like, training camp was a mess.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have, their home base wasn't finished. And that certainly left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. The players, the players like the food. I know this much. They're really they're well fed. They've got this players lounge upstairs.
That's been a big tradition for them. Let's feed them healthy meals.
Yeah, they've got this players lounge. That part upstairs is fine, but the actual ice level took forever. They didn't. It took forever to finish. Yeah. We would be standing. There was I can't remember when it was. Whether it was early in the season. I think it was early in the season. We're in the new press conference area, which obviously is there doubles as their video meeting room. And we had to stop a Boudreaux availability because there was drilling in the floor upstairs.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, that was what we were dealing with. So what was they dealing with behind the scenes? So, they're building this suite, and I think they're going, is this going to affect things again? And, Allvin kind of nodded towards the general notion that they need to have things ready to go.
No, yeah, they absolutely do. With regards to that Section 117, what's being done, I've heard some are unhappy that they're losing their seats or going to be displaced, which I suppose is standard. I also heard there were some very unhappy that they decided to message that during March break when Some may be out of town and weren't able to attend
to make their choice
personally to ask the questions thereof. The captaincy, Rick Tocchet talked about it. He talked about how he wanted to sit back and empower others, see who emerged. He said that process is continuing. There's no date for naming a captain. He name-checked first Quinn Hughes, then Elias Pettersson, then JT Miller, and said Jim, Patrick, the Twins, Gonchar, Foote, and others will all have a voice in naming the next captain.
Yeah. I mean, Quinn Hughes was the only guy to wear a suit on Friday. On Saturday.
He looked like yes.
Dress for the job you want.
Is this a little Bo Horvat?
Dress for the job
I'm
you
not
want.
campaigning, but I've released a memoir.
No tie.
Okay.
He looked like I think he recognizes he's taking it on. He's recognized that yes, no matter what, if he's going to be a leader for this group, which they need him to be, he has to be ready to speak. And he has become, I would say over the last couple of months, he became one of the guys that stood up to the mic when he was asked, and was ready to go. Obviously Miller's always been one of those guys. Miller, for whatever reason, does like talking to us. And Pettersson has become less of a fan. And that's fine. I mean, that's life. They are under no obligation to do anything other than say, do the minimum and answer the questions. But Quinn has clearly made a choice, I think, to represent himself and represent the team.
Yeah.
You think back, he spoke up. I mean, I did not expect him to speak up about Tanner Pearson's injury.
I did not either.
When I was there in Tampa and I asked the question, I simply said, because it was one of those ones where the news had come out right around the morning skate, and there had been, I can't remember, there was a few other things going on, and I had dropped the ball and forgot to ask someone, hey, how tough is it to hear the news about a teammate like that? And that simply was, oh yeah, I know it's really sad. We're sorry to see him. He's a big part.
Standard stuff. Yeah.
I was totally expecting boilerplate, and I said this to Quinn. It was literally the last question of the interview. And he goes off and said, whatever, however it was, he said, that wasn't handled right.
Yeah.
And I was so caught off that I didn't have my follow-up ready because I wasn't expecting, I'm like, what wasn't? And then I tried to ask Bruce wasn't going to go there. But
it's clear he wanted to say something. It was clear he wanted to say something on behalf of a teammate and on behalf of a room, and that continued as the season continued.
Exactly. And then Pearson, was asked about that, and he said, well, it's good, that's just sticking up for your teammates.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no.
And then don't forget in the last game of the year, he got mad at. We still don't really know what made him so mad at Athanasiou, but there's a guy who was that passionate in the last game of this.
Yeah.
And he, as he said to me, it's just been a long season.
We're still waiting final word on Podkolzin's health and whether or not he can play with Abby. But it sounds like he and his Russian teammates, for the most part, for the all part, are going to be in the Lower Mainland and not risking getting trapped in Russia.
I guess. I mean, yeah. So Mikheyev said, he's basically because of his knee going to be here. When we asked Kuzmenko, Mikheyev was doing the translating for him and said he wouldn't be in Vancouver, but didn't say Russia. I mean, when he said somewhere, maybe he meant, but certainly it was a careful answer.
Maybe he just meant I'll be vacationing somewhere. I won't necessarily be in Vancouver. But
yeah, I mean, getting to Russia is complicated. You have to go to Dubai, or you have to go to Istanbul, or you have to go to Beijing. And
that Vancouver, Beijing, Moscow. Oh boy.
Anyway, yeah, but I mean, these. How to put it? There are certainly ways to avoid the draft, and the way things have been working in Russia in general, that they've been filling out the army with people from the outer edges of Russia. They do not tend to take people from Moscow, but one of the ways that you avoid service altogether is by being a quote unquote student. So, I know, for instance, Vitaly Kravtsov is still an ongoing university student.
Yeah.
In sport management. We had a nice chat about that.
Wise agent.
What's that?
Wise agent.
Yes, exactly. So I believe, my understanding from someone was that Kuzmenko had done this before, and was, I guess, prepared to enroll as a master's student.
He knows the rigmarole.
But I don't. In the end, that's sort of that, and that also in general, it's up 28 thing. So I think he turns 28. I can't remember when his birthday is. Mikheyev is obviously too old. He's technically too old. I mean,
rules are being bent, though.
There are rules are bent all over the place in Russia. So I don't know necessarily how much that is a factor, but certainly I think it is on. Obviously, it's on their minds. It's not. I mean, you can see the number of people that have fled that country. Whether all these guys support it or not, I don't know. Whether they're actively, opposed to the idea, I don't know. But certainly, these guys are very much in the window of these sort of upper middle class Russians who are doing everything they can to avoid service.
It's great to see you again. Next time, let me know when you're going to be at the Nat. I'd love to visit with Lawless.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We'll catch up next Tuesday.
Well, bring Jim Robson next time again, won't you?
I spent some time with Jim Robson. In fact, I saw Jim Robson twice this weekend.
Wow.
And I understand he's hosting the Vancouver Canadians press conference today. Saw him at the Nat. Him and Dr. Sport, Greg Douglas, had a nice catch-up there. I had not introduced my brother to either of them, and so my brother was with him. We went over and met him. And then, sure enough, J-Pat and I were at the Red Robinson tribute at the Commodore on Sunday, and who walked in but Greg Douglas and Jim Robson.
There you go.
And had another catch-up with them. And Robson was actually telling J-Pat and I stories about how the Vancouver High School Track and Field Championships at Empire Stadium used to draw like 20,000 fans. So I guess all the kids got on the day off school.
Yes.
And every school went down to Empire to watch the track and field. And he said Red used to set up with a booth there.
Oh, wow.
And Red would be more popular oftentimes than the events going on.
Of course.
Inside Empire Stadium, which of course leads to the great line, the only thing more boring than track is field.
Wow.
Although Farhan always gets mad at me when I say that because he covers track and field. Or has.
I've covered track and field.
Yeah,
I'm
I've
gonna
covered
stand
some
up for
track and field too.
Come on, Matt.
You know,
great athletes.
They are sensational athletes. It is people running for the most part.
Yeah.
Occasionally they jump. I actually find the field part more entertaining. I like the high jump and I like the pole vault.
You don't like seeing how far they can throw the hammer throw?
Yeah, that too. Long jump's fun too. Triple jump is weird, but yeah.
All right.
Okay. Next
On
Tuesday.
that note,
that's the first time we have had triple jump discussion on this show.
You know, hey, no, not true.
No?
Mike Conley Sr., fantastic triple jumper, and his son plays point guard in the NBA.
Yeah.
I believe we've noted that way back when.
Really? Okay. All right. Stand corrected.
thanks, guys.